Hello and welcome to an update of our Goldilocks experiment. We are going to start with the smallest shredded bin to the largest cut up pieces bin, and we'll see what these guys have done with our last feeding as well as the general condition of the bin, and see if I need to add any water. Our heaters have been running non-stop in the basement because it has been really cool and well, I should say cold. And so heaters tend to dry out the air more than normal, so I'm always concerned to make sure that the moisture is just right for them. So it feels good though. The bedding feels moist. So I'm thinking that they are okay. And this is where we fed. Covered this with some newspaper, and let's see. So this bin has gotten the ground up food, and I think it was watermelon. And aside from just a few pieces here and there, tiny pieces, they have pretty much worked through the food, which of course I was expecting that. There's some, skins of the watermelon, but skins always go last. So this is interesting for me as well, because I adjust the food. When I'm lazy, I will not chop it up. I'll just throw it in whole. But now that I'm having to do it this way, it will be interesting to see. Now, the thing I've noticed also is that this newspaper is completely moist throughout. And it will be interesting to see. Before I feed, I want to see the condition of all the bins and compare the newspaper and the moisture. So let me check in on the middle bin. Okay, so this is our middle bin, and wow, you can see that the paper is moist around the edges, but it's not completely moist throughout. That's really interesting. And the material though feels okay. It feels moist. The worms are happy, and this is where we fed them chunks, and of course you can see that the chunks of watermelon are still there, and the worms are happily working on them, but they are definitely still there. Interesting. Okay, well, let's go and take a look then at our large pieces bin and see what's going on there. Okay, so here I can see that the newspaper is also wet at some places, but not completely wet. And the material feels good. I don't have to worry about any dry spots from what I can tell and from what I can see. The worms are happy. They look healthy, so I am not concerned at all And let's see. We fed in the center here. And the whole piece is still basically intact. How interesting. I was expecting that. I really was. But you can see the total difference in how the worms are able to process the food when it is given to them in smaller pieces. Well, let's feed them up anyway this week, and then I will see what we're going to do next week based on what I find in the bin. And here we have our 3 bananas. So right now I'm in the kitchen, but I just wanted to show you that one of these bananas is going to be put through the blender, the other is going to be cut up in pieces, and the third is going to be given whole. I'm just going to split it open so the worms can get to the center. So let me take care of that and we'll go ahead and feed them. Okay, so we're back in the basement and you can see what these bananas look like now. One is whole and I just split it open. Another one is cut up in large pieces and the other one is just mush. So let's get on with the feeding. I'm going to feed basically in the same spot as the rest of the food and see how they do. And I think in the beginning, the very beginning of this experiment, I did say that I may have to give one bin more feeding and another one less feeding based on how the worms do. Because although you don't want to overfeed a bin, you also don't want to underfeed and starve the worms who are processing the food quickly, as this bin will probably do. So that is just something I'm going to have to adapt to once we get to that point. But right now there is plenty of food here. So by adding more food, I'm hoping they are going to be okay. They do love their bananas. So this is just in chunks. And I'm going to give them some oyster shell. We're going to cover this up and let them work on that. And let's move over to our, oops, get that light out of the way, maneuvering here. And then I'm going to put the whole banana right next to the watermelon. And then, there we go. I'll put it fruit side down. And I'm going to sprinkle this with some oyster shell as well. But I already noticed, while there is no springtails in the bin with the smallest shreds, there are already springtails here because the worms can't get to the food. It has to be broken down more before they can do anything with it. Something to consider. So, we are done, and hopefully we will not have any issues with me doing a little extra feeding here with these bins. So this is our update, and we'll check on them next week. Thanks for joining me.